Senator Biden, it's nice to have you here. As the youngest member of the Senate, the one, therefore, who may expect the longest career there, I wonder if you'd say to us, since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected, why should people think that the system produces corrupt results when there you are?
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though. The system does produce corruption, and I think implicit in the system is corruption, when in fact, whether or not you can run for public office, and it costs a great deal of money to run for the United States Senate, even from a small state like Delaware, you have to go to those people who have money, and they always want something.
The Bidens seem to be enjoying their new wealth. They're renting a lavish 12,000 square foot house in Virginia.
No young man who's the son of a politician gets 50 grand a month, who has no experience
83. I think it was 83.
I feel Joe Biden put his hands on my shoulders, get up very close to me from behind, lean in, smell my hair, and then plant a slow kiss on the top of my head.
That he copied part of a paper when in law school and recently adopted as his own quotations from the Kennedys and other politicians.
We have been asking voters at various events that we've been following Biden at about these gaffes. Do they matter? Do they cause them to kind of reevaluate his campaign? And almost every voter that we've talked to here has said no.
Mr. Joe Biden, the man with the plan. He might not remember it, but that doesn't really matter. When you have the DNC and the mainstream media at your beck and call, we're going to be covering basically everything. The gaffes, the corruption, how the media used to tear him apart versus how they now cover for him at every turn, including, but not limited to, numerous assault allegations, even with a blatantly obvious cognitive decline happening right in front of the whole world. So let's see how Joe Biden progressed from political pariah to Democratic nominee.
Former Vice President Joe Biden is expected to officially jump into the 2020 race for president on Thursday. This will be Biden's third bid for the office. He came up short in both the 1988 and 2008 presidential elections.
Joe Biden spent 36 years in the United States Senate in this building, but he spent a lot of time thinking about running for president. He's run twice before, and today he jumped into the 2020 race with a bold appeal to bedrock American values.
The sketchy history of Joe Biden starts around 1965 at the Syracuse University College of Law. Just after finishing at the bottom of his class at the University of Delaware, he was found to have plagiarized 5 of the pages in his law review article. Biden later said this was inadvertent because he wasn't aware of the proper rules regarding citation. He was given an F and required to retake the course. Despite all of this, Biden received his Juris Doctor in 1968, again finishing near the bottom of his 85-person class. But Joe didn't take this placement with stride. This is where his long history of, shall we call it, embellishing his accomplishments began.
Question. What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is, could you quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I won the international moot court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school. school in 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
There is a reoccurring pattern of embellishing accomplishments and downright lying in Joe Biden's life. And he used to be not so good at getting away with it. Later on, in 1972, Joe Biden ran for state senate and surprisingly won by a little over 3,000 votes, even though he was seen as an underdog. But as Wikipedia puts it, his energy level, his attractive young family, and his ability to connect with voters' emotions gave him an advantage over ready-to-retire Boggs. But just when it seemed like things couldn't get any better, that's when tragedy hit. Biden's wife and daughter were killed in a car accident while out shopping for Christmas gifts.
Just a week before Christmas 1972, the wife of newly elected Senator Joe Biden and their baby daughter were killed, and their two sons badly injured when the Biden family car was broadsided by a truck at this intersection in Delaware.
Fighting through depression and religious doubt, Joe Biden had a rough few years, but after taking some time to heal and rethink his life and ambitions, Biden ended up getting back on his feet and getting remarried in 1977. That's where he got his real start working in the Senate, sponsoring and voting for bills that went after everything from gay marriage to school busing, decisions that have led to a lot of criticism over the years. In 1988, Biden was looking for a little bit more than just being a member of the Senate. That's when he decided to run for president. But that's where his history of embellishing his accomplishments and borrowing from other political figures' speeches finally came back to haunt him.
After conceding just last weekend that no one knows me, Senator Joseph Biden of Delaware today became the fifth Democrat to declare he's seeking the party's presidential nomination. Lim Tucker has our report.
Bye-bye Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover.
Is Joe Biden dead meat, yes or no?
I think so.
Bob?
Terminal condition.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
Most people didn't know who he was, Joe Biden, and now they're going to say, oh yeah, he's the guy who plagiarized. That's
a lot of people.
Politically, that's devastating. These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground, and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
Cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
For the joy of their play.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Being accused of plagiarism seems to be a reoccurring pattern in the life of Joe Biden. He's been accused of it in law school and a myriad of speeches during the 1988 presidential race. The media at the time weren't standing for it and ended up chasing him out of the presidential race. Going through all of that, and in combination with his wife and his daughter being killed just years earlier, caused Biden a lot of stress. Stress that whittled him down and probably caused his multiple aneurysms.
I had a serious health problem. I was stricken with what they call an aneurysm, and I had an aneurysm below my brain inside my cranial cavity, which required them to take some extraordinary procedures to get to it. An aneurysm is a weakness. If this were your artery, you're like looking down a garden hose, there's a weakness in the wall of the artery, like those old bicycle tubes, you know, used to sort of pop out. Well, that's what happens. It's a weakness in the wall of the artery, and they've got to go in, the neurosurgeons, and take a clip, and they fasten it on that bulging part of the artery. It pushes the artery back together, it reconstitutes itself, and they leave that clip there. Now, it's not so bad if they can get to it when that clip is in your chest, when the artery is in your chest or your stomach or wherever. When it's in your head, they got to take the top of your head off and go in and do that. And I had 2 of those things, those aneurysms. I said, Doc, what are my chances? He said, Senator, for mortality or morbidity? And I'm thinking, I swear to God.
First, I'd like to say I'm not a doctor and I'm not qualified to make a diagnosis or any real judgment here. But this begs the question, could this be the reason we see a steep decline in the sharpness of Joe Biden from this point forward?
Senator Joe, I mean, but I mean, it's not about, I know you're supporting by saying booing, but look, here's the... $1.2 billion. So you go ahead and you stack spaghetti sauce at a store and in a supermarket. You control the guy or the woman who brings out the carts on a forklift. What happened? That turned blonde in the sun. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. Donald Trump does pose an extra threat to this. It's not hypothetical. You help one person at a time. And so my admiration for you is equally as deeply held by President. Stop moving what's this thing called? Teleprompter.
And of course, it was a rare, unfiltered opportunity to watch Biden being Biden.
Well, folks, eliminate one tax loophole out of $1.6 trillion worth, $1.4 trillion worth. Out of $1.4 billion. It's hard to even say it's so much. And by the way, it's cost a lot of money. It cost about $740 billion over 10 years. No, words matter a lot, and they got the point across. You're the only guys that didn't understand it. My name's Joe Biden. I'm running for President of the United States. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other person.
Something is clearly going on here. If this isn't a pattern of mental decline, then I don't know what is. Joe Biden did apparently have a problem with stuttering back in the day, and some people just say that's making a return in his life.
The Atlantic recently published a powerful piece about your childhood stutter. The author says he was stuttering at age 4, and he writes after interviewing you, I've been following practically everything he said for months now, and sometimes what is characterized as a memory lapse is indeed a stutter.
But stuttering doesn't make you forget where you are and who you're talking to. Stuttering doesn't make you make analogies that lead to nowhere or complete nonsense.
Here's his latest appearance where once more he forgot where he was and then tried to pass it off as some kind of joke.
Welcome to Kingswood Community Center. Actually, that's the one down I used to work as a joke. You didn't know where we were anyway. It's great to be here and back in a place where...
Former Vice President Joe Biden is accusing reporters of not understanding his words on the campaign trail. It comes after the former vice president's latest gaffe. Over the weekend in Keene, New Hampshire, Biden complimented the town before incorrectly identifying which state he was speaking in.
What's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it? And what a neat town.
I mean, this is sort of a scenic, beautiful town.
Let's look at video from a fundraiser again this week where he seems to forget Barack Obama's name.
Because they invaded another country and annexed a significant portion of it called Crimea. Right. He's saying that it was my boss, it was his fault.
The pattern is very clear, but I'll leave it up to you to make a conclusion. I think it's time to shift the conversation to something that started way back, just after Biden won his seat in the Senate, and continues to this day. Joe Biden's long history of sponsoring and writing various crime bills that have led to mass incarceration and massive growth in the prison industry. And now that he's chosen Kamala Harris as his running mate, we have a duo that is essentially the architects of mass incarceration.
Today the bickering stops, the era of excuses is over, the law-abiding citizens of our country have made their voices heard. Never again should Washington put politics and party above law and order.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, "I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill." You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
That 1994 crime bill, it did contribute to mass incarceration in our country.
Joe Biden has been criticized for his role in writing the 1994 crime bill for a long time. But there is no disputing the bills Joe Biden has signed and wrote have played a large role in mass incarceration. From the mandatory minimums to the tougher sentencing for minor offenses. He even once joked about the bill giving the death penalty for everything but jaywalking.
One, the death penalty. It provides 53 death penalty offenses. Weak as can be, you know? We do everything but hang people for jaywalking in this bill.
Joe Biden isn't the only one with a bad past, though. Let's take a quick moment to talk about his newly anointed VP, Kamala Harris. Actually, we could just let Tulsi Gabbard take this one.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Democrats love to talk about systemic racism embedded everywhere, and I'm usually inclined not to believe or take any of it seriously. But if there really is any sort of systemic racism in our laws regarding prosecution of criminals, then I don't think it would be a stretch to say that Joe Biden and even Kamala Harris, to an extent, is largely responsible.
The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill, has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become
socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street.
From the 1976 speech he made saying criminals should be prosecuted instead of rehabilitated, to the 1994 crime bill that was a key contributor to mass incarceration, Joe Biden has his face all over some of the worst crime bills in history. Now Biden asks why African Americans have to fear for their life on a daily basis? Maybe he should look at the bills he wrote and sponsored before he goes and criticizes anyone else. Joe Biden has a funny way of looking over or completely trying to change the history of things he's done in some cases. For instance, Joe Biden's role in looking over the Anita Hill hearing for the Clarence Thomas confirmation.
Professor, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Information that Anita Hill had given confidentially to a Senate aide had been leaked about the sexual harassment she said she had endured years earlier as an employee of Thomas's at the EEOC.
Thomas categorically denies the charges.
If Senator Biden would say exactly what he feels about this, and I know this may not be a fair question to you, what do you think he'd say about all this? About all the, the whole thing that happened?
Well, I think he would say, as he has said, and which I think he's correct in saying, that he would do it the same way again.
My name is Rachel Miller, and my question is for the former vice president. In the context of changing the culture and women being brave enough to come forward, I'm wondering if there is anything that you would do differently with regards to Anita Hill if given the opportunity.
No, let's get something straight here. I believed Anita Hill. I voted against Clarence Thomas.
Biden told me personally that he didn't believe her. He said, I don't know why she did this. I don't mean to malign Joe, but Joe told me he didn't believe her.
I remember the eloquent statement made by the chairman, Senator Biden, Saturday night, when he said if there's any doubt, the benefit of the doubt should go to the nominee, Clarence Thomas. Following the chairman's advice, if there's any doubt, you give the benefit of the doubt to Clarence Thomas.
You denied all of the allegations.
Oh, absolutely. From day one, it didn't happen. I mean, if somebody makes a broad allegation against you, what would you do?
Ask him to prove it, I guess.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Joe Biden's role in the Anita Hill hearing has been largely criticized, from not letting 3 other accusers speak to trying to keep the whole thing from public view. Almost everyone agrees Joe Biden handled it all very poorly. Clarence Thomas still vehemently maintains his innocence regarding this matter, and I could only think of the striking parallels between the Brett Kavanaugh case. You have all these accusations many years later, with no real proof of anything, all in a seeming attempt to prevent a Supreme Court justice from being nominated. But regardless of that matter, Joe Biden's handling of the situation was very poor. And the fact that he tries to cover up what he did at the time is just downright embarrassing.
A really notable woman, Anita Hill, showed the courage of a lifetime, talking about her experience being harassed by Clarence Thomas. But she paid a terrible price. She was abused through the hearing.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
I wish I could have done something.
Tell the committee what was the most embarrassing of all the incidences that you have alleged.
When I opposed Clarence Thomas' nomination, I voted against him.
Again, these people have decided already once and for all they're for you or against you. You need better lawyers. You need to hire me. And every expert comes forward and says, there's a pattern. It doesn't happen in isolated incidents. It's a pattern. If there's not a pattern, to me, that's probative. That has some dispositive weight. No one's proved a pattern here of anything.
But she paid a terrible price. She was abused through the hearing. I wish I could have done something. I wish I could have done something. I wish I could have done something.
Feeling haunted.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
On one hand, we have Joe Biden acting like he was on Anita Hill's side and trying to make a positive change from inside the confirmation hearing, and acting like he wasn't on Clarence Thomas's side. But on the other hand, reality, the record shows just the opposite. Anyway, while we're on the topic of assault allegations,
Joe Biden facing mounting pressure to speak out about an accusation he sexually assaulted a Senate staffer in 1993. Former Senate aide Tara Reid says then-Senator Biden pinned her against a wall and assaulted her in a corridor.
No, Joe Biden would never do something like that. This has to be a mistake.
I felt him get closer. He leaned in and was like right behind me on my body. And he leans down, smells my hair, and then plants this big long kiss on the top of my head.
Well, this is awkward. At least there's no pattern though. Just like Joe said, no pattern, then it's just probative.
We begin with former Vice President Joe Biden responding to an accusation of inappropriate touching.
He walked up to me and wrapped his hands around my face like that and pulled me in and started rubbing noses with me.
It's one person of an allegation that's 5 years old, and that cannot negate or change or diminish in any way Joe Biden's very strong record empowering women.
Look, before the Me Too movement, women were not listened to. Now, I've heard Joe Biden's explanation. I think it's sufficient. I think the allegations of Professor Ford are extremely credible. These allegations are to be treated with the utmost gravity. I believe her. Many, many, many Americans believe her.
Do you view this as a closed issue, or what is your response?
Well, it is for me. I have said I am proud to support Joe Biden for president. I believe him when he says it didn't happen.
Well, here we are, gathered at a time of a pivotal moment for our country, for this Congress, and how we go forward. We're here to stand in support of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and to applaud her courage as she prepares to tell her story.
I'll never forget watching the blank faces of the men questioning Professor Hill, dismissing her very serious, very credible allegations. Today, the parallels between Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh are clear.
Take a good hard look at the Democratic Party's Lord and Savior. Accusations are just that, accusations. But what we have here is a clear pattern of inappropriate contact with so many people on so many occasions. So you take that in context with the sexual assault allegations, then I really think you have something. But did you see how differently the media and the Democrats treated the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh versus Joe Biden? One, they scream that they have to get to the bottom of it, regardless of what anyone does or says. And the other, they just take Joe Biden's word for it and call it a day. It's like they don't even attempt to try and hide it. It's all so blatantly obvious. Do you want to know what else is blatantly obvious? The mass corruption riddled through the Biden family tree. And by that, of course, I'm talking about Joe's son, Hunter Biden, and his relationship with a Ukrainian gas company by the name of Burisma Holdings, and a Chinese state-backed private equity firm, BHR Equity. Conveniently, Hunter was just randomly recruited into these company boards with zero prior experience.
Yeah, so the backdrop to all of this is a couple months, 2 months before Hunter Biden joined the board, there were these Maidan protests, which were big protests on Independence Square in Kiev, and it was a coalition of Ukrainians primarily fed up with corruption. So what happened is Yanukovych fled the country, he fled to Russia, and all of his inner circle and people who were connected to him, who were seen to have gotten very rich as a result of his having held office in Ukraine, they also fled to Russia. But there is his former ecology minister, who at the time was on the Security Council of the country, he didn't flee. He didn't flee to Russia. He did leave the country, but he retained his assets. He retained his gas company, and in order to sort of make sure that his assets would survive, suddenly the company started bringing on very prominent Westerners onto its board, and one of those people was Hunter Biden.
So Hunter Biden got a job on the board of Burisma to help ensure this corrupt Ukrainian gas company didn't lose their assets. Joe has tried to distance himself from Hunter by acting like he was ignorant to the whole situation. But pictures, common sense, and Hunter prove otherwise.
Well, the story really begins on June 28th when Devin Archer, business partner to Hunter Biden, is convicted in a New York court involving a bond scheme where they fraudulently sold $60 million worth of bonds connected to an Indian tribe. So just to give you an idea, over a 14-month period from 2014 through early 2016, while Joe Biden is vice president of the United States, a Ukrainian company called Burisma, is controlled by a very corrupt oligarch, sends $3 million into this account. So large amounts of foreign money flowing in, and the number one recipient of the cash coming out is the vice president's son, Hunter Biden.
It smells to high heaven. It smells like corruption. And every day on the mainstream media, they say, oh, there's no there. This has been investigated. There's no corruption. I think the American people don't buy it.
If nothing else, Hunter Biden could be an expert in corruption in the Ukraine.
Did you and your father ever discuss Ukraine?
No. As I said, the only time was after a news account, and it wasn't a discussion in any way. There's no but to this, no.
And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Well, it just so happens that the general prosecutor was investigating an energy firm in which Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was heavily invested. Burisma Holdings is an energy corporation in Ukraine, and Hunter Biden, the son of the former vice president, has made a rather handsome profit from it, especially in the aftermath of the 2014 events in Ukraine in which pro-EU forces took power. That prosecutor was looking into 3 different instances of foul play from Hunter's cash cow. However, all it took was a phone call from Papa Joe, and that prosecutor was out.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man.
I'm a very bad man. Keep thinking that.
If Joe Biden has never spoken with Hunter regarding his foreign business dealings, why is he in this photo with Devin Archer and Hunter Biden? And why is he getting prosecutors fired that are looking into the company Hunter is working for? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what are these foreign companies paying Hunter for? Someone dishonorably discharged from the military due to failing a drug test for cocaine. And not to mention, he has 0 qualifications for either of these company boards. And while we're talking about corruption and the accumulation of dirty money, let's talk about the sudden jump in Biden's personal wealth since leaving office in 2016. He made a staggering $11 million in 2017 and another $4.6 million in 2018. Biden used to be the self-described poorest member of Congress. Now look at him. And will the media ever call him out on any of it aside from surface-level nonsense to appease the public? Probably not. Let's take a look at how the media covers for Joe Biden on all sorts of topics. And I know just what to start with. Remember those reporters that ripped Biden to shreds and made him drop out of the 1988 presidential race due to plagiarism? Well, listen to them now.
These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out. Bye-bye Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover.
Biden is the closest to a generic individual. There's nothing about him to hate. There's nothing about him to dislike, and Pat, you told me that a long time ago.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now that's a little too much, because as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
According to a new CNN poll, more than 6 in 10 Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters say that former Vice President Joe Biden should run for president. Half of all Americans say that they would be at least somewhat likely to back him. What do you think? Does Joe Biden have what it takes to beat Donald Trump?
Well, let's look at him. He's a Democrat, but he's a centrist leftist. Yes, left, but enough to the center to appeal to people who just aren't on the far left fringe of the Democratic Party. He's likable, and he has experience. He actually has experience in doing things, not as an executive, but in doing things that in Washington you should have if you're president of the United States. The problem is, Don, how does he get the nomination? The Democratic Party is moving sharply to the left. Young people, bless them. Women, bless them. People of color, bless them. And he's got to convince them that he's the right person to take on Donald Trump. If he can get the nomination, I think he can beat Trump, sure.
It seems like, of all people, they would know exactly what Joe Biden is guilty of and how he's not a good candidate. I wonder why they would ever look over such a thing. Yet, if you go back just a few months into the primaries, you have this same guy saying this.
Joe Biden, he's a nice guy, but I think he doesn't have the fire in the belly. I think he doesn't have what it takes to get in a knife fight in the back alley with Donald Trump, taught by Roy Cohn, to win at any cost, no matter whether it's legal, no matter you hurt anyone, no matter whether you try to never concede a point. I don't think Joe's the guy. I think Mike Bloomberg's the guy, and he proved it in New York City as the mayor of the biggest city in our country.
Now that's kind of odd. I mean, it's not like this shows a pattern of the media covering for Biden by any means necessary, though. Oh, wait.
Absolutely. We have been asking voters at various events that we've been following Biden at throughout the course of his South Carolina swing about these gaffes. Do they matter? Do they cause them to kind of reevaluate his campaign? And almost every voter that we've talked to here has said no, that doesn't make a difference, that it all actually makes him a little more human.
First mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
Yeah. There's a part of Biden that feels more Reagan-esque that way. You're like, it's Grandpa, it's Uncle Joe.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Those "oh, that Joe" moments are part of his political charm.
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
So much of what is appealing about him to a lot of voters is the fact that he's authentic.
Hey, 14.
Okay, this is not okay. Hold on, all right? Hey, let's
There's a lot of guys. Biden yesterday showed the other side of his humanity, and that is he's a fighter.
And some people see that as charming, a candidate who's willing to air it out face-to-face with a guy.
This is going to be a net plus for Joe Biden.
Little hands-on treatment from the vice president.
Everybody knows he's a touchy-feely guy, and he's just very friendly. He is. He was reportedly comforting her after she fell on ice.
It's spreading love.
Coons said Maggie was not uncomfortable at all.
It is going to be interesting to see if Biden can pivot. You know, will he take the incoming and try to respond, or will he be able to rise above it and pivot? If I were on his team and I were advising him, I'd say pivot, pivot, pivot.
And pivot, like you're saying, right? If they bring up abortion, which they'll bring up abortion, he can pivot. If they bring up Anita Hill. He can talk about how terrible it was and gee whiz, blah, blah, blah. However, he does that in 15 seconds and pivot. Isn't that the key?
That's exactly right. And he needs to pivot to the things about Joe Biden that everybody loves. The big smile, I am a regular guy, I know who you are, I see you, and we can have a brighter future together.
I think the pattern in all of this is pretty clear. I don't even think they're trying to hide it. It's just a by any means necessary strategy at this point. It's all about getting their guy in office, even if their guy is guilty of God knows how much corruption, or even if their guy is showing a very clear pattern of declining mentally to the point you don't understand half of what he says most of the time. As long as they win and Trump loses, that's all that matters. Gaffes, mental decline, mass corruption, be damned.
I've been a United States Senator for 15 years, as a matter of fact, since I've been 29 years old. As a 29-year-old kid, when I ran for the Senate, I did it with a great deal of enthusiasm as a father and a husband, and I thought that I could help make things better. And I still feel that way. I think government has an important role to play to make things better for our children. As I contemplated running for the presidency, I thought about what did my world travels and travels around this country teach me in my 15 years experience as a senator. And one thing came through crystal clear to me.
There's more to our story.
I felt him get closer. He leaned in and was like right behind me on my body. And he leans down, smells my hair, and then plants this big, long kiss on the top of my head.
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago, at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
We choose truth over facts.
I don't have to listen to your phone calls to know what you're doing. If I know every single phone call you made, I'm able to determine every single person you talk to. I can get a pattern about your life that is very, very intrusive.
The latest details on the Russia investigation are beginning to make Watergate look like child's play. The revelations of the Obama-era political targeting grow more ominous by the day. The FBI is under increasing pressure tonight to explain why it was surveilling the Trump campaign.